What would you have told yourself 5 years ago in business that you wish you knew today? Or it's something that you've learned that, like, if you knew it earlier, it would have helped you out a little bit quicker?
I would tell my younger self, like, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about you. Like, it literally doesn't matter. It matters what you think about you. And that's the most important thing.
That's big.
I think I cared when I was younger and I was an athlete. I swam, I this, I that, I did dance. And I think I was really focused on like what other people were going to think or making other people proud and at the end of the day, you go to sleep alone, even if you're like with somebody, you're in your own body, in your own mind. And then you wake up and then you have to push for you.
All right. So today on the New How podcast, we have CEO of Pritzker Law Group, Rachael Pritzker. Rachael focuses her practice on zoning, land use, government relations, advocacy, and public property acquisition. Rachael spearheads the firm's advocacy group working to build relationships between the private sector and government in order to problem solve, remove unnecessary red tape through legislative initiatives, and obtain public funds on behalf of major developers here in the city, life science organizations, and as well as for nonprofits. Rachael is also one of Philadelphia's only real estate attorneys with experience in both the private sector and local government, having served as the legislative counsel to former Councilman Alan Dom, and having worked in the private practice as a large private law firm with current state senator and PA Democratic Party chairman Sharif Street. Welcome, Rachael Pritzker.
Thank you, Brian.
Rachael is the only second-time guest on this podcast. For those of you who didn't listen, we had our first season. Rachael and Adam were both on here, early days of Pritzker Law Group. I'm talking, this was like 2018, 2019, really early days. But now, fast forward through COVID and a global pandemic, here you are, surviving better than ever. Glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I'm interested at first because with this episode, it's going to be a little different, right? We talked about what got you into law and all that early on, but I want to hear, what it's like been building a business from, I think when we last chatted, it was like you and Adam and you had like one person, you're working at like a small room at some building in the city to now, where are you at today and what's happened over the last 5 years?
A lot. Someone in your office earlier was like, remember when you were in that closet? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, aren't you happy you're not there anymore? I'm like, no, actually it's easier when it's just like either you're doing it or someone else is doing it, not like you, and then delegating it to like a team. And then, so we've grown quite a bit. We're about 10 people.
Okay.
Constantly growing and evolving. I think the pandemic made it hard for everybody, but it also for us just made us kind of relook at like first systems and processes. How do we work with a team that's not in office? How do we deal with the city, all the external facing things? And then now sort of doing this like hybrid back in the office, work from home, just kind of feeling that out. My focus on a day-to-day is helping everybody else do whatever they have to do, and then client work and like new business. So I'm kind of doing the same stuff as I was doing, just taking more leadership stuff on, and then just trying to like refine what we have as we start to like grow to kind of this next phase of our business.
So let's talk about, because, a lot of times we get, first episodes like, how'd you get started? Like you're operating, right? Like I asked a question, like, what are some of the challenges about starting a business? But I want to know from you, like, what are some of the challenges like that going from, 3 people now to 10 people? Like, what are some of the hurdles and nuances that you've had to overcome there?
I think you can appreciate this. Like nobody tells you how to do the things. So like, this is my first business.
You don't have a playbook you've been following?
No. And like, you can read all sorts of stuff and like listen to podcasts, but like the practical application of like first dealing with human beings in general, like we're not dealing with robots. People have emotions, they have bad days, they have stuff that goes on. And then the teaching that has to occur and the repetition and the consistency of that, and then making sure how you're showing up, like that's all a lot of like mental and emotional gymnastics besides just like doing the work. So I think that people don't realize how difficult having a business is, just from all the stuff that first of all, half the stuff you don't want to do, but you have to do it, right? And then getting yourself to do that stuff. And then being able to do it scalably, like consistently over time. So I think that's what's hard. And for me though, like at the core of it, I love what I'm doing. Like, I love the service we're providing. I love the people I get to work with inside my company and externally. And like, we're problem solving. I tell people when you're a lawyer or you're in a service business, like people aren't calling you to be like, hey, just calling to tell you I'm having a great day. Hope you are too. See ya. It's like people are complaining or they have issues. And the fact that like I'm a source to help solve for that, I still see it the same way as I did in the beginning, which is like, I'm honored to help people do a lot of the things.
And obviously you have a unique advantage being a lawyer in a city, having dealt with the government side and now on the private side. What's like your favorite issue you've been able to solve that kind of bridges both the public and private? Because it sounds like you're passionate about both, right?
Yeah.
But like, what's been a problem that you can say that you've solved for somebody without attorney-client privilege, right? Like what's something that like, or typically you solve for people that bridges those gaps?
Truthfully, it's like the things that like when you get a client or get somebody who's like tried to solve it themselves for like a long period of time and they can't, and like you can make a phone call or two and fix it really quickly for them. The relief that like comes from that on their end, it's not really like my favorite is land use work. I think anybody who like knows me and who's worked with me knows I have like a passion and like an obsession with it. I like the chess game. I like winning, but it's when you like help someone with something that they've been struggling with and they're just so appreciative and they didn't see the 10 years it took you to be able to like pick up the phone call and solve for that thing so quickly. That's my favorite of all of it is when you just take that like stress off from somebody.
That 10-minute phone call it takes you is really behind the scenes. It's 10 years of relationship building to be able to have that 10-minute phone call.
Yes.
And I think that's the politics that people don't really get and understand. Like they know the service. We're calling Rachel and her team to help us through a variance or help us through something on our property. But it's 10 years prior that you've built up to be able to charge for those 10 minutes to a client, right? Like
the relationships are the special sauce. And I think the thing I light up the most about is the people I get to work with to problem solve, whether it's city people and staffers or council members or people that work in the administration, and also civil engineers and architects and the client. Like that is fun for me because it's sort of like a very collaborative space. And I like really thrive in a team like that.
I want to dive into a little bit here. So obviously metrics in business matter, right? Building a business, like what type of metrics are you looking at in your business that's helping you get to where you're at, right?
So there's like the typical numbers like lawyers bill, and we have software that we look at that. I think I try to just understand like when people are effective during a day, like when we're scheduling meetings. Like I used to be like somebody who thought you had to have meetings at like 9 a.m. And then I realized like, well, I'm not really ready to go at 9 a.m. So just that's sort of what I'm looking at. And like, how many meetings do we need to have? Someone said to me the other day, like, I guess Elon Musk or one of these guys said something to the effect of like, if you're having a lot of meetings, like it's bad leadership and or like bad processes. So I'm trying to look at like, I don't want to be stuck in meetings all day. I know people need time to sit and do work. That's more so what I'm looking at. And how do I spend enough time with my people to help grow them and teach more so than sitting in 11 meetings and worrying about everybody's numbers and things like that. So it's kind of a combination of all those things. And then when we're not hitting our numbers, like why is that? As opposed to just saying like, mush, 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 bill more. And also truthfully, our firm operates a lot off of understanding the businesses that we serve. So like with development, people don't often like just open-ended checkbook billable hours. They want to know like, how long is this going to take? What's the cost? Because they got to go to a bank. And so trying to look at some of the repetitive processes and systems and services we provide and boiling it down to like, can we do a flat fee? Can we do a hybrid flat fee hourly model? Like that stuff is what I spend more time on than looking at how many hours everyone's billing.
It's great talking to a lawyer, be like, I can do that for $2,000. And like, know that, whether it takes you 10-minute phone call or 2 hours, right? Like, having that reassurance as a client makes, it's helpful. It really is.
And as not only am I running the company, but like I'm also a practicing lawyer. So like I am sitting doing legal work, and I can tell you that it is distracting and disruptive to have to bill every email. Like, so is there a way to still capture the time and the value, but not have it be so incrementally disruptive in a day?
One of the, just looking at your bio here and everything, one of the metrics I'm just curious on, 98% approval rating in front of municipalities boards. Obviously, here in Philadelphia with the ZBA, we have RCOs we got to deal with as part of that process. But I want to understand from your standpoint, like what allows you to have that level of approval rating? Like why are you at 98% when I know others aren't?
So I'm going to say like one very like overly confident thing about myself, especially
You're
because
allowed
you're
to.
my friend.
You're allowed to.
I'm a killer. Like that's a fact. So
Watch out.
like when I set out to do this, and I was having a conversation with someone in my office yesterday who wants to go to law school, and there's a lot of people in her life that are making that challenging. And I just kind of said to her, like, when I set out to do this, my brother said to me, like, what's the goal? And I'm like, I want to be the best zoning attorney. Like at the time, that was the goal that ever was. And I don't want to be like, oh, she was like good or decent. And then what does it take to do that? Well, like if people are hiring me to do something, it's not going to be because like I sort of win, right? And then it's more than what cases do I take on? Understanding the like psychology and like the reading of the room that has to go on, like the emotional intelligence when you're presenting in front of people, the theater of it. And then like honestly taking feedback. Like I've lost plenty of times. When I lose
2% of the time, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
which is still plenty.
Yeah, well, I mean, over a career of over a decade at this point of being an attorney, I have lost, and I look at that and I go, why did I lose? And what of that can I control? What of that didn't I see? As opposed to like, oh well, the city's just awful, or forget this or forget that. And that's what's enabled me to like sort of restructure the way I like pitch a project, or like we handle prep for a certain meeting or a board. And again, like I don't like the feeling of losing. Like it's more for me than for anybody else. I don't like losing. And that's just a competitive thing I have. And so as a result of that, like my pressure on myself is extremely hard. I tell my team, if I'm asking you to do something, it's because I'm willing to do it also, or I've done it 900 times. So that's the place I come from with these cases. And being female in the space as well, being younger than a lot of people that do this, you've got to have some competitive edge.
You're WB as well, women own business, like that's amazing.
Thank you. And all of that is what makes us stand out, but you have to be so much better and more aggressive and more succinct in your execution when you aren't, at a massive firm and you're not, in the typical demographic or, look of what people that exist in my space.
I want to dive into some tacticalness, and I want to get into the whole tax code across the city. Okay. Right now, we're in we're currently recording this. It is August, right? But like the city just released, I got a stack of properties and projects I'm involved with. Like here's your new tax assessment for the city across the board. I want to hear from you as a lawyer that deals with tax abatements and tax appeals. Like, what should people be considering? Like, oh my God, they all of a sudden they think, tax appeal. Like I know one of my properties actually got reduced in taxes, so I don't think I can appeal that, right? Like that's what it was last year. Here's what it is this year. Like I feel like I'm okay. I still feel like it's overvalued, but what would you tell someone like me that's looking at their tax bill right now, and what should I be considering? And do I appeal it? Do I not? Is it fair? Talk to me.
So
give me the 10-minute
general
advice.
Disclosure. I am a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
that's good.
For anyone
Disclosure.
who's listening,
Put that on. This
like
is
I'm not your lawyer.
Advice,
Like, disclaimer. So a couple things. I think that with the city of Philadelphia, what our experience has been in sort of dealing with these and resolving them is appraisal is probably like the number one thing I tell people to go do. We can spend a lot of time on comps or what you feel or what this or what that, but typically getting an appraisal from a third party professional that can tell you what they really think the valuation is, looking at the building and comps, is sort of like the earmarker for these cases. I tell them, even if you don't need one in Philly, if you have a property that's assessed at not worth, but assessed at $1 million more, you have to get an appraisal.
Gotcha.
You don't have to turn it over until way later in the process, usually like 2 weeks before a hearing. However, that's the number one indicator, because you may feel like it's overassessed, you may feel like it's underassessed, but having some real documentation, that's number one.
Yeah.
If you purchased it recently for more than what the city has it assessed at, leave it alone.
Okay.
Okay, so leave that alone.
So if I paid $3 million and the city says it's worth $2 million,
leave it alone.
You're dealing with fire. Okay, unless
there are instances where people do overpay for real estate, whether it's because there was a bidding war, whether it's because, market conditions, whatever. There are cases that we've taken that someone has overpaid for a property, and we've been able to, through a correct evaluation and talking to some experts and doing some work, we've been able to narrow that down. I also will say that sometimes like abatements aren't applied correctly. You want to look at the city's property.phil.gov to make sure your exemptions are on there, whether it's tax abatement or homestead. I tell everybody it's not like it doesn't live somewhere else. So it's either on paper, or it's not. And cases that I think are really good are ones in which there was a significant increase, not like, 20,000. And then also look at the history of the property as a whole. Like a lot of these properties have been traditionally underassessed for a long time. The city is now just catching up with them. And it can take, a year and a half to work through these. So it's just not for the faint of heart. But we always tell people to get an appraisal. We do 15-minute consults. We don't charge for that to give people a sense of time and process. And then again, like our team has to execute. So I don't take on cases where I just like, I'm a consultant, I give you some fluff and then I'm like, best of luck. Like our team then has to deliver on what I'm saying. So we're careful what cases we take on.
So you're gonna be real, and if I come to you, with appraisal that's over what it says, you're gonna tell me, Brian, you got a good deal.
I saw one of those yesterday, and I was like, bury this and like leave it alone.
Just leave it alone.
Go.
Okay. Do you think the way the city's taxing properties is fair across the city right now? Like, do you feel like these rates are fine with what property owners are getting and receiving for their properties? Like, I'm just curious from your standpoint, the process in which they tax properties, do you feel like it's okay or
we could have an entire podcast series on my thoughts about the city of Philadelphia, and I'm going to try to keep it positive.
Keep it PG too.
Yeah, I'll try to. So I think that we have over 500,000 individual parcels of land in the city alone. And that's just like land, like that's not what's on them, right? And then you have like very disjointed systems across the different agencies from like a data and like information perspective, right? So, and then the software the city does have for this stuff doesn't always bring in all the information that an evaluator would need. Plus, I don't know how many evaluators there have, what the expertise of them is, how they're getting paid, if it's fair to market. So you got like a lot of other like system related issues. And then when you want to ask somebody at the city in OPA, like, how do you guys do evaluation? And they can't explain it in like 5 to 7 minutes. That's a little bit of a concern because I can ask a third party appraiser and they can tell me like typically how these things work. I also think that the city uses real estate taxes, heavily in their budget. And so sometimes when you see these big budget increases, you're kind of like, well, where are we going to get the money from? So do I think the city does it fair? No. Do I think the city's set up to do it fairly? No. Do I think it's fixable? 100%. But I think that there's a lot of like systematic issues with the city doing this stuff. And then also, I think just like there's a lot of backlogs in how any of this really truly operates.
Have you seen, because obviously like typically when you look at Philadelphia, like, they look at a blanket across the board. Oh, the city, real estate pricing has increased 2%, or the average home across the board is, this amount across the city of Philadelphia. Do you feel as though they target certain areas of the cities versus others to raise taxes? Have you seen instances of that?
Yeah, we've seen like pockets where like it randomly goes up astronomically and within a couple blocks. And then like these properties are kind of left alone. And then these are like, I know that there was issues many years ago around like commercial properties and, and then you have like the school district that weighs in also, right? So like that's another authority that like can't independently tax, but also like can obtain tax revenues. And they're very focused on because of their budget and their constraints. So there's like a lot that goes on. But I think if we felt that it was fair, you wouldn't have the backlog of appeals that you have. And I think that a lot of people wouldn't see these like massive swings. There's no reason a property goes up like 60 to 80% in 1 year, unless something astronomical went on and we'd all know, see and feel and hear it, right? Like, so some of it, like I had a property, just a quick example, that client inherited. It was multifamily in Center City, like great location, but like had been like delayed maintenance, like she had inherited it from her dad.
Of course.
The property's basis was like 2.6 the 1 year. Then the last year it went up to 5.7. Like she didn't put $1 into it. So like while it was in a great area and all that, great property, like if you actually saw the property, there's no way it went up $3 million in 1 year with nothing going on. Like this isn't Beverly Hills. So there's a lot of disparity with that.
But like in a case like that, do you even need an appraisal?
100. Yeah. So because it was assessed at $1 million or more, you needed an appraisal. And it's actually the appraisal is what got us to be able to negotiate the value down. And our firm, just like, maybe this goes without saying, like the goal is not to like get a leg up on the city. It's just to get a fair assessment, because the reality of it is you want people to be able to carry the property forever if they want to. And then, you know, we only can make certain rents in this city, and buildings cost money to maintain and keep. So you have to be able to, and if you have financing, you have to be able to cover the debt on the property to make money. It's not a break even game, right? So that's sort of the other side of it. That
so there is a financial understanding piece of this, where like, hey, this is what they're charging in rents for the property. You're saying it's worth this, and the taxes, like, they can't actually make that happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, we look at cap rate, we look at rent rolls. We, you know, sometimes people are charging under market. That's not really the city's problem, but yeah, we look at it as a holistic picture, and then the goal is like, we want people to be able to keep their properties, especially long-standing in families and stuff like that. So I think all anybody's looking for is for it to be fair. And I think it could get that way with a lot of collaboration. And also, like, to be honest, like, if you look at what city council talks about, the mayor talks about, mayors have talked about, property tax assessments is like an unsexy thing. Like, people want to talk about green space and parks and buildings, and like, they want to talk about sexy, fun things, not like, let's dig into the tax code and the efficiencies within the process. Like, for me, I would like love that. I would roll up my sleeves any day to help with that. But that's not what a lot of people are focused on. But it should be, because it really affects even just the viability of Philadelphia and the attractiveness of it.
That's the biggest part, right? Like, you know, if my taxes are going up on a building and I'm trying to attract a new business tenant, right? Like, it makes it hard now for that new mom and pop business to get in. Like, I don't have commercial spaces that have swatches of space for a large anchor tenant, like a Walgreens or something crazy, right? Like, my commercial tenants are 400 to 600 square foot spaces, right? Get out of the gate business, right? Like, if my tax increase on my building now, I have to pass that tax along to a business like that. It just makes it harder, I feel.
And it's not predictable year over year. Like, these swings are really challenging.
Right? If my taxes are now up another $20,000 and I have lease terms with these tenants, I can't just go to these tenants and be like, yep, you got to pay all this new tax money this year. Sucks. But that's not how leases are structured necessarily, unless it's like, you know, a class A tenant usually, right? So I think the city has a lot of work to do on that front. I don't feel like it's a fair system across the board. We talk about equity, inclusion, all this shit, but like, a lot of
people feel that way, and like neighborhood people feel that way as well. And then we start to do stuff like, let's like get rid of the tax abatement, or like, let's add, you know, more on the homestead. It's like, then we try to do all these like Band-Aid fixes, as opposed to just like, if you cleaned up the main issue and you got that done correctly, you wouldn't need 900 different exemptions and incentives and, you know, all sorts of stuff. And that's one of the first things I looked at when I worked for the councilman. Like, we looked at all the city's exemptions and incentives to see, like, are they even working? And like, half of them I didn't even know exist. But yeah, I mean, the city does have a lot of work, and it's unfair in a lot to developers, to businesses, to people who live in the neighborhoods. Like, it's across the board. So anybody who's listening to this, I feel like if they're not falling asleep with our tax conversation,
it's imperative stuff though. Like, it creates the pulse of the city of what's happening and how these projects are moving forward, and putting businesses and putting residents, and why residents might be moving out or moving in. Like, it's where it all stems from is the tax code.
And I was never like, I never thought I was going to be like, we've like this.
We can nerd out on this for hours.
Like, our firm's like won awards for tax work. And it's funny to me, because like, if anybody knows me, like, I'm not like your numbers girl. Like, I'm like good at spending money. I'm not like, you know, like, I'm not the person you want to like talk about like tax and pro formas with. However, because it's such a city integrated process, and it's all about like sort of the government relations side of like how you deal with the Office of Property Assessment and council and all sorts of things. Like, we've really like gotten like a pretty big hold in that space, because you need to have such workability with government in like resolving these. So it's a seasonal practice for us, but it's a huge part of what we do. And what I look at, I mean, in the whole picture of when I'm working on projects for people, because that really, their ability to develop and then hold on to the property and carry the property is also important, you know, in the grand scheme of it.
Awesome. Well, let's go back a little bit. I want to get back into Rachael, CEO, entrepreneur says, right? I want to talk a little bit about, you know, you grew your company now. Last time we chatted, right? 3 people, you, your brother, like, I don't know if it was an intern, it was somebody, right? Cat, right? The 3 of you. Now you're at 10 people. What are you doing now? Like, what's the vision for where PLG's heading? And like, are we talking 20 people, 30 people, 400 people? Like, where does, you know, and obviously you're centrally based here in Philadelphia with a 98% approval rating at the ZBA. What does PLG look like in 5 years when you come back on this podcast? What are you setting up to do?
It's a great question. I don't know. And that's the truth.
It's okay. It's okay not to know.
I have dabbled in other things over the last 7-8 years to know what I like really definitely don't want to do. And like, we've talked about that. Like there's a lot that I thought I'd want. And I'm really now just trying to like refocus myself and figure out like, not just like, what do I want to do, but like, how do we attract the right people to my company? And like, how do we build and scale out some of the process we have? How do we get more efficient? But like, what does the team also want to do? Like someone said to me yesterday, I'm having coffee with a friend of mine tomorrow morning, and I'm not a morning person, if you know me. And so like, but I'm going to get up early for this. And I sent him my schedule and I was like, this is what my day is like, just so when I say I can't do something, it's not like I'm not messing around. Like I really have things I have to unfortunately do. And he was like, I have a question. Like, how do you do all that in a day and not like drown? And one of the things I said was like, besides like some sort of arrogant stuff, just to be silly, I basically was like, I have a team, right? And like, when I think about like what my goal is and what our goal is, it's like, what does the team want to also do? Because I'm not on this like ship alone, and I have to think about like, what's our team's goals in addition to mine. It's never been for me about a ton of bodies. It's never been like, I want to have this massive company. I've been offered before to merge my firm into other firms or take a big leadership position at an existing firm and I don't know that like managing people is like really what my goal is, because I think where I shine is like not inside of a building and not like, although I do love mentoring and working with people. I think I'm now, with some of the other stuff I was doing like off my plate now, which is taking me some time and I'm still kind of working through, I'm going to sit and figure that out. Like, I'm 35, like what's the next 10, 20 years going to look like? How do I want to spend the time? But it's never been about tons of people. It's never even been about tons of money. It's more so like, how can I make a big impact and like show up at as like the best version of me every day, and like give that extra like sparkle and secret sauce that is just like me.
Well, I know you're involved in a lot of boards. You're on the BIA, right? You're involved in different, union league. Like, what has brought you the most level of excitement in the last 6 months, you think? I know we're getting deep.
Honestly,
here,
like,
I'm curious, like, just as, because again, entrepreneurs think different. Again, things change daily for us, right? Like,
anything like where I'm in front of people and like talking about my thing and also like learning about theirs. Like, I'm genuinely interested in people. I like to grow myself by asking other people who have done, in my mind, a lot more than I have, how they did it and what the downfalls were and how do you handle this failure or that thing. And our firm has become a group that puts on a lot of events and curates a lot of content and events, mostly because I was going to a lot of events that like, I was like, I don't even want to be here. And I'm not a huge drinker. So while I understand the social aspect of that, if you're just going and networking because there's alcohol there, like for me mentally, that's so boring. And so I was like, well, if no one else is doing it, instead of like hating on events or this or that, let me start to curate some. And so that's been something I've done pretty significantly the last like year, 2 years at a pretty decent scale and with a pretty amazing like grouping of people that I've been able to like collaborate with. That brings me like the most joy and the most fun is like when you
dots, it's bringing the right people.
It's like coming up with like you talk about entrepreneurship, like coming up with an idea and then like you make it real. Like, and that's what I loved about real estate development when I was like starting being a lawyer. I was like, I don't want to just push paper around. And like, no offense to anyone
Here's a piece of land, like what could it be?
But like, boom, here's a building. And like, I contributed to that. So I think for me, like the events, and we've talked about this and bringing people together and like learning from people and that being in person, the pandemic starved me so much of being in person. And I'm a huge like extrovert that way. I love being around people. So I think that's really sort of something that I've brought into my firm is like also this event side of it and curating like cool events that are like social, but like have meaningful content and with people that you'd probably never get in a pairing on a panel otherwise. And then also collaborating with all these other groups that you mentioned that I'm a part of, not just being like a member and like playing golf, but like helping bring talent and curating like, some of that with those groups. And they've been so generous to me, a lot of the private clubs and things where I've been like, let me show you what I can do. And it'll bring
these people
value.
In a room that just hasn't been done before.
Yeah. And like giving exposure to other people that like wouldn't ever get to meet, like enter name XY, I don't want to like name drop on this podcast, but like there's people that I get to have access to because I've worked at it. Right. And I've come from a really genuine place that I'm like, you got to meet Brian. Like the fact that you don't know Brian, like, you know what I'm saying?
Thank you. Are you talking about me?
Yeah, I'm talking, but I'm being serious. And like, that's right. So, and that helps everybody. And that's not, it's from a little bit of a selfish place because it's my creative side, but also because it's fun and it's like necessary for our city, truthfully.
So I want to I want to go now to Rachael Pritzker, habits as CEO, entrepreneur, right? Yeah. So 5 years ago or 4 or 5 years ago, last time you were on here, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about, hey, I have a schedule. Here's what I got to do today. I have a team around me now. I don't drink. I don't like mornings, right? But I'm curious.
I didn't say I don't drink. I'm just not a big drinker.
Big drinker, right?
And someone's going to see me like, oh, you said you don't drink.
She's
holding a beer. Yeah.
But talk about like your habits. You're a super lawyer, right? Like, how do you become Rachael Pritzker, running a law firm of 10 people, right? Doing stuff, government, public, private, right? What do you eat for breakfast? Like, do you eat like Wheaties? Like, are you like this out the door? Like, people want to know. Like, that's like they want to relate that way. So talk a little bit about your habits.
This is the corniest, but the best thing. So like, I'm human, right? So I've gone through like ebbs and flows of like really tough times and like good times and like whatever. I'm not like a get up at 4 a.m. in the gym. I wish I was. Like, I would love that. I've done it like at random times, whatever. I think about like now, this has been like the last 3 months. It's just like keeping my peace. Yeah. So like if it's not positive, get it away from me. Whether that's people, huge. A vibe, energy, because my like natural state of being, and you know this from like working with me and being my friend for a long time, I'm very like silly and positive and goofy. And like that needs to come out in life. If I'm bogged down and it's negative, like I'm just not operating both as like a boss to other people that way, to myself, to clients. I can't think as clearly. So right now for me, the focus, especially the last 3 months, and I lived outside the city for the last couple months to like, I just felt I was too accessible. I just wanted to like get some space. It was just like thinking about how does this feel to me? Like, how does my nervous system feel? Am I nervous? Am I anxious? Like, what's it like? Is that vibe off? Is my vibe off? And getting people away from me, out of my life, whether it's clients that I don't want to work with anymore, which as a business owner, you
started firing clients. That's big.
It's not firing. It's just like when you're done doing the thing you said you were going to do, like not taking on more stuff. If like the engagement of that has been really negative and you don't feel good about it. And I don't need anybody to be like, great job all the time. But like, if I'm pulling rabbits out of a hat for you and you're not nice to me and my team and you're rude, I'm all set on helping you. I don't care how much money it is.
Exactly.
And I've said to my team, if we work with people you don't like and they're not kind to you, because I work with a lot of women, like we need to be in like the best mindset we can because we're problem solving for people. I like to exercise as much as I can. I'm vegan. I've been vegan 10 years. So I think, like as far as eating.
Every time we do dinner, I have to very much look to make sure Rachael Pritzker can dine at the restaurant.
And I appreciate that. That's part of like what makes my soul feel good, right? Because I do eat like, vegan ice cream and things.
I did one time go out with Rachael. We got dinner and I was about to order octopus.
Oh my God, I freaked out.
And she freaked out on me. And I didn't end up ordering octopus. But what's crazy is I don't think I've eaten it since that meeting. But just,
I try not to like, and one of my best friends, she's always like, don't say anything, Rachael. I try to not say anything because generally it doesn't like bother me in the same way it used to. However, for whatever reason, I watched a documentary about octopuses and I've watched a lot, like people who know me know, like I'm obsessed with whales. It's uncomfortable how much I know, whatever, but octopus are so smart. And I watched this documentary and it's like embedded in my brain. What's the name of it?
Just so people.
It's called My Octopus Friend.
And it's on Netflix.
And it's like wild. And it took me a while to watch it because everyone's like, you should watch it. And I was like, whatever. Like it was unreal. And when someone orders octopus and you're like, there's been like 3 friends of mine who've ordered in front of me. I have this like visceral reaction, like, don't eat that. And you've eaten with, we've eaten.
Cauliflower screams when you pull from the ground.
We've eaten at steak places together where I'm eating. So yes, but I try to eat healthy.
Yep.
And then honestly, like I try to be kind to myself. Like I'm really hard on myself. I don't think that benefits anybody.
People beat themselves up so much.
It doesn't fix it. Yeah, I'm not like, okay, now I just like talked badly about myself for the last 3 hours. Like, let me go out there and kill it. Like, and that's important.
Do you do
how
any
you talk and think.
sense of like gratitude to yourself? Like I'm curious because again, what you mentioned a couple of negativity and positivity, right? You know, how do you like, what do you tell yourself that helps you eliminate? Is it the gratitude? Like, I'm curious what underlies all of that to get you to a point where you're like, nah, move this negativity out of my life. Like what's driving that for you?
I think it's just like how I was feeling for like a significant period of time. I just kind of felt like, are you allowed to curse on this? Or
you can, yeah, absolutely.
I just felt like shit. Yeah. Like I just consistently felt like shit. I was waking up, I was like in a bad mood. I was negative. I'm like talking to other people in a way I don't like how, and then you also start to see like, I believe like the universe like brings things in and out of your life. Like good stuff wasn't happening to me. Like new client, like there was like a vibe that was off. And so I was like, you know what? Nobody's like knocking on and I say this, Adam, all the time. Nobody's knocking on your door to come save you. Nobody. Yeah, I've been waiting for Prince Charming for a long time. It's not coming.
It ain't the government. It ain't
nobody.
It's nobody really.
So I was like, you need to pull yourself out of this. And I think if you surround yourself by people who genuinely want to see you win, not because they're going to get something from it, but because they really, and also who will tell you what's what about yourself. There's a lot of people when you're in a leadership role or, you know, you have employees or whatever, or you have a certain way about you where people are yes people around you. That is great if you're trying to have a fan club. That is not great if you're trying to grow as a person. And I have some
or
really...
a business.
Or a business. Yeah. And I have some really good friends and family who are like, yo, your shit stinks. You're being not nice. Like, we don't want to be around this. And I've had to be like, I got a course correct, or I'm going to be like a party of one.
Yeah, you need those people around you, whether they're mentors, whether they're peers that don't tell you whether you like it, what's coming out of their mouth or not. I want to dive on that subject for a minute because, you know, I recently joined a peer group of Vistage. Shout out to Vistage. They're awesome. It's like 20,000 global members. But it puts me in a room with other CEOs, entrepreneurs.
Their logo should like
with the logo, pops up. But I have a peer group of 14 guys that, you know, are running business in all different sectors. And then occasionally, you know, we meet once a month off site for an all day thing and we bring in speakers. Brought in a speaker recently. I forget his name off the cuff, but he talked about this concept of trying to get to the middle place, right? Trying to get to the middle ground. And as a business leader, right? Like you're Rachael Pritzker, super lawyer. You run a 10 person law firm. You have connections from the billionaire level down to, you know, this level and everybody in between, and government knows your name in the city of Philadelphia, right? You can intimidate people. And it's something that I had to learn too, right?
It's the red hair.
Right? It could be the red hair, but you could become intimidating in business, right? Especially to your team. So like if there's a problem, right? And you go, well, how do we fix this? Who has the set to tell Rachael Pritzker how to fix something, right? Based on all you've accomplished. So what I've learned is there's techniques in how you start dealing with your team to allow them the open space to get to that middle ground, right? Like you might be doing something one way and you think it's good. They might have a better solution, but they're afraid to even raise their hand to say something because you're Rachael Pritzker, right? You're forced to be reckoned with. You're a killer.
For me. Yeah, people that work for me.
Have you like talk about some strategies maybe that you're inherently doing that allow you to move forward in that way? Because I'm curious.
So I think it's also like practicing what you preach. So like I love sports, and so like I say a lot of like sports quotes and metaphors to my team. Like teams win championships. Like I say like these corny things to them, and then I'm like, if I'm gonna say it, I've got to like actually like believe it and be it and do it. My team. All of them bite back at me a little bit. I think we've been working together. Like most people who work for me have been there for like many years. It's not like new people every week. I think when you work with your twin brother, I think you get feedback you don't want. So Adam's always been like somebody who will be like, nobody's going to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this. And I think also just like, I want to win. So like if I'm not, and I don't have a lot of the answers, like I typically know how to fix a lot of things, but especially like my like main paralegals that do like most of the land development work with me, like there's stuff they know way better than I do, because as I've grown the business and grown like what I'm doing and focused on, like I can't be all in the weeds with how you fix this little thing on the Eclipse system or whatever. I tend to think to myself, like, I need to empower them to do things without me. Cause I did have a while in my business where there was a bottleneck where like everything needed Rachel's approval, like from like an email getting sent out to like every document. And I was like, I'm never going to get anything done if nobody's empowered to do other things.
Because that's something that every entrepreneur deals with as they're scaling teams of business. Give me a technique that you've used. So like, I'll tell you one. If someone asks me to do something that I would relate to, like it's a $25 task, I just don't either respond or I delete it. And it really, and what it's done over time, it actually made it so like either they solve it themselves or they know who to go to in my organization. It was like this red velvet rope that I started setting up. Right? And you experienced it to some extent when we first met years ago, where it's like you tried to email me, like if you email me 15 times, like I'll get back to you, but there's not that first one, right? It's like or
the first five,
right? But that's something I started doing. It just inherently, like someone messaged me something like, hey, Brian, I need this thing, or like, can you give me an answer to this? And it's something that they could either do themselves. I literally just started ignoring it.
How many times I wanted to be to like figure it out?
Well, I don't say figure it out, do it yourself, but like if you ask me something, that if it comes back a second time or a third time, I realize that, okay, maybe there's something off where either there's a system I don't have in place or they don't have an answer somewhere to know who can make this decision. That's not me. And it's actually worked flawlessly almost to the point where like I stopped getting asked to do things.
So there's two things I do a lot, which is one is like, I just turn it around and say like, well, what do you think we should do? Just because it makes them have to like not be so reliant on like, they need me to answer it. And now they're thinking about, and I talk to my team a lot about like moving from like task doing to like thinking and task doing, right? Like not just like executing the thing, but thinking about what you're executing, right? Especially because like we have law licenses. So like you have to be very careful like what you're doing and saying and how you're saying it, because people rely on it like a bit differently than if
that
I just
email's coming back in in discovery or whatever.
Well, and like people be like, well, you said I should do like so. And also like a good friend of mine said to me a while ago, like in our meetings, because again, this was like me trying to problem solve by asking other people. And you and I have sat at a ton of dinners where we just like, hey, here's the problem, Brian, tell me how you fix it. Like we go back and forth, and my friend said to me, we are allowed to talk about the problem twice and then we have to move to solution. And a solution can be, I don't know the answer.
Correct.
And I had a call with Adam yesterday about something like very complicated. And I said, Adam, I don't need you to have the answer. It's okay to say, I don't know. And then what we'll do is we'll figure it out. But that's what I've been doing is asking my team to give, what do you think? And then, okay, now we've talked about the problem 2 times, 3 times. And unless we're doing city council hearings where all they want to do is beat around a problem for 3 hours, I'd like to now move it to solution.
One of the other, and again, back to the ignoring problem, one of the other things I've found helpful, like, all right, there's a problem. Sometimes the best thing about that problem is to pretend it's actually not a problem.
Okay.
Be like, oh, we have a problem here. We're not, people aren't spending enough of their bonusly points on culture.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like, they're not liking each other. Like, is that a problem? Or like, do we just let it go? Right. Like, so sometimes some of these problems that arise in businesses actually aren't problems. You actually solve them by just ignoring it.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are not like, and one of the things I also do with my team is like, and you get clients like this, they're like, someone's anxiety is not your anxiety. Like you don't need to take that on because like you're feverishly needing this done. And I literally tell my team regularly, like, we're not like saving lives here. Okay. Like we're not in the ER. We're not doing brain surgery. So like, keep in mind that like at a base level, when someone's like a client's reaching out, freaking out about something. Now, are there things that are like, if someone's building is being demolished? Yes. Like that is like a level 5. We need to like, but short of that, there's nothing we're doing where someone's gonna die. So with that in mind, like bring the adrenaline down. Like, and I've been talking about this with myself recently. Meeting emotion with emotion is okay. Meeting logic with logic, okay. You cannot meet emotion with logic. So you sometimes have to wait until the other person like chills out, calms down, like their like amygdala stops firing, and then you can address it logically. And sometimes tomorrow is an appropriate time to talk about it.
Have you ever heard of the 1-3-1 concept?
No.
So the 1-3-1, so now back to not ignoring stuff, right? Because you've heard now, I just ignore it and let it go.
And we know, by the way, everyone who knows Brian knows, like, best of luck getting him to respond to an email.
Don't email me. Like people are like, oh my God, I sent an email. I'm like, did you?
Yeah.
I have yet to, I'm going to eventually hire someone full-time that goes through and deals with my email. I'm not quite there
Yeah,
yet.
they'll be done in 40 years.
Dude.
Yeah, they'll be done in 40
I love
years.
on like my phone. Someone will be like, you have 14,000 email. I'm like, that
and it's
doesn't
not like
bother
mine
you?
where like I'm online shopping. You're not an online shopper. So like it's probably like legitimate emails.
Yeah, some of it, but a lot of it's just people hounding me trying to get stuff. Actually, I know Gary Vee has a whole team that literally multiple people that scrape his email.
You need that.
Multiple. At some point I will, but right now I see things that are important. I flag them. I deal with it later. But the 1-3-1 concept. So this is what I started doing that actually has worked tremendously. The 1-3-1 concept. You ready? First, I ask people, what's the 1-3-1? What's the problem? Give me the 3 solutions that I have in front of me. And what's the one you would choose?
I love that.
And then 98% of the time, I have an approval rating to say, yeah, go.
Yeah,
and that's the decision.
I actually love that.
So it's the 1-3-1. So anytime someone knocks on your door, comes in, busts in, kicks down, Rachel, we have a problem. You go, you should be saying, what's the 1-3-1? What's the problem?
Yeah.
What are my 3 solutions? And what would you choose? What's the one option out of those 3 that you would choose? Yeah. And what that does is over time, it starts building their confidence so they can make a decision without having to bother you with what I would call is like a $25 task. Mm-hmm. Brian, we got to get this invoice out. Okay, well, what's the problem? What are our solutions? Can they, our normal billing, we send consultant invoices out once a month. Why do they need it today? Is there so you start.
And is it like a repeating problem? Like, so some of the stuff that we've fixed in our organization is just like, it's the same problem over and over again. Yeah. And so like, it's a process issue. It's like we started doing a lot of stuff with like forms and links. Cause like I would get stuck on these intake calls for like all day. And like because I love what I'm doing, I will literally sit and talk your ear off for 45 minutes when it could be resolved in 15.
The only thing I would recommend, cause I know your intake form and I've seen this. Yeah. What I would recommend you do, cause we have an intake form too, but I have someone verbally call and do the intake form with the client. It's made a difference because I tried that too, where you send the form, fill this out, we'll get back to you. Have someone call up, spend 10 minutes filling out the form. So here's
the only problem for us. We do everything like we're attorneys, right? So we're documenting stuff back and forth. Like if I can't get you to answer emails, that's a huge problem for me.
Yeah. So again, because again, part of the client intake, we've done certain things, right? Like, if you can't book a meeting, like we typically have them book a meeting. And then once they book it, I have someone that then goes in and does a discovery call ahead of time before I actually hop on the call.
Right.
So like when I'm on the call, I have whatever. They might have assets, pictures, drawings. Then I have, I know who the proposal is going to, like all that's filled out before I even touch it. And then I hop on my 15-minute call.
Yeah.
But again, it's also.
And also like we have to run conflict checks. So like there's like some ethical stuff I have to do. But we've done that where there's some clients who are like, want to text me. And I'm like, that's not efficient for me. Not. And like, there's some people that I'll make allowances for, like, if you're vision impaired or this or that, like I'm not, a jerk, but for the most part to scale as a team, and then the other thing is we have it connected with other softwares. Yeah. So like, I don't want to be taking notes here and then we're duplicating notes here and then this one's taking notes there. And then it's just a cluster of notes.
The other thing you mentioned your team of 10 people, and it's hard because I look back, like when I stopped actually getting to do what I call the fun work, right? Mm-hmm. Like actually doing the work and designing, rendering, whatever. I look back, it was around like 14, 15 people, but I look back like why, today I can't touch work, right? Mm-hmm. But I look back like what I started talking to clients. So I say things to clients like, oh, you don't want me touching your project. You don't want me doing your law work on this. You want so-and-so on my team because they're way more confident. So what I also started doing was like training my clients to like, they don't call me for problems. They'll call me to like, if there's a major thing, right? Like, oh my God, I've sent an email 5 times and so-and-so has not replied back. I then get involved. Yeah. But like, from the point of like full control of the project, that took time at like that stage where like right where you're at as of an operator now, like you got to hand it off to Kat, or you got to hand it off to somebody in your office that is going to do 95% of it, but that client needs to still feel like Rachael Pritzker's touching it. Yeah. And it's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing.
My paralegals, especially, like because again, like the people who work for me have worked for me, and I usually like term it like work with me because it's not like, I'm not like, but the girls who work with me, the people that work with me have been around for a while with me. So people know, like, you want Allison to do this or that, correct, or you want so-and-so to do this or that. They know that.
I want Allison to do my taxes.
Yeah. Well, they know, like, if you need something with city council, or you need something with the land bank, or like you want, an analysis of like, should you buy this or can we do this? It's me. But for your abatement, like you don't need my help with that. Like, do you need me at the hearing if you like file it, if we have to do a late file? Like, yeah, but I think people have gotten a bit good at that. And what I'll do is either ignore the emails like you're saying, or I'll just loop in Allison or to me or someone else and be like, they'll fix this for you.
Of course.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's all part of the learning thing. And also having like the same people work in your organization and keeping those people happy, because losing any one of those and any of those people and then having to bring someone else on and train them, I mean, that's really hard. And then you play the game as a employer. Like I want to invest in people, but I also like, I've had people who have like had really unrealistic goals of what they should get paid for, like the expertise they have or whatever. And what do I want to keep them? Yeah, more so because it's less disruptive than it is, and then there's stuff that I can pass off and teach people. The hardest thing that I can't is like the political relationships or the political knowledge. Like you have to spend time shadowing me and like coming to fundraisers and like, building that
like
genuine.
Going to City Hall. I didn't even know you could just walk into City Hall.
Oh yeah.
Like
I used to work there. Like I walk in there the way I walk in your office. I own the place.
I went to a meeting. You had taken me to City Hall. I'm like, you could just like go through security and just come and sit and listen to these people talk. Like, damn, like everyone should see what's happening here. This is crazy.
You pay for it with your tax money. You should go. But seeing your government at work, and then, again, like with the secret sauce, people are like, why are you this or that? It's the relationships, like, and what people don't see is how much time I actually spend on that. How many things I try to remember about people, how much I try to show up for people, like go to your fundraiser or go to your this or go to your that, or help your aunt with this thing that I don't even take $1 for. I just help fix it or whatever. Like BIA, we talked about. I work a lot on legislation. That's all volunteer, like volunteer. Like none of that is, I'm not getting paid to fix legislation or draft something or testify in council, but that's like part of the greater good of all the things. And that's also relationship building, right? Like, because and you know this from having a business, everything isn't like instant gratification. Yeah, no. I don't meet with Brian and he needs to give me business tomorrow. No, there's people that are now sending business my way that I have curated a relationship with over 7 years.
Isn't it wild? Like what's crazy is you never know who anybody is. And I think that's something as an entrepreneur, like you can't ever assume. The moment you start assuming somebody is something, or this is their value on paper, or this, like, it's all about just like expanding your network and trying to provide as much value as you put out there. Because what's crazy is it always comes back tenfold. Yeah. Like beyond the company, like I'll give you a recent example. We had a client that we were doing duplexes, triplexes, quads for in the city. A decent amount, not a ton, maybe 20, 30 total units. A relationship for a few years. All of a sudden, introduces his cousin who is coming into the city to do their largest project, and it's 600 plus units. They don't do shit. This is their first project in the city of Philadelphia. Yeah. They operate out of New York, Connecticut, DC, but like, we're coming to Philadelphia. And this guy was like, I've had a good relationship with this firm. I know they do bigger stuff, but talk to them first. Yeah. What? Never. And it's not like we neglected them, didn't answer their emails, right? Like, just treated them well, did right by them of what they paid us, our value to do. And like, all of a sudden it leads to this, but like that happens every day when you're positive, right? You're thinking the right way. It comes back tenfold every time. So that 30 units came back 20-fold. Now we're looking at a 600 unit project, right? With a new client that's just entering this marketplace.
But you got to put in the same love and care. Like people will say to me like, well, what kind of product do you like these more than that? It's not about that. It's like who I like doing the work with and who I like winning with, more so than I would be just excited over a duplex as I would over 800 units. 800 units, you could be working with someone that doesn't appreciate what you're doing. And, but to your point on that is like, it's the long-term vision of it. Cause like, I think those of us who build businesses, it's not a short-term stint. It's not a quick, I'm not trying to be an influencer. Like I'm literally trying to have a business that's going to withstand like decades. And, that for me is important.
Sense that the people that aren't out there aren't doing as much as the people that are out there.
What do you mean?
So like, like you see people out there like constantly like, oh, like, how much business are they actually doing versus people that like might not post as much? Like it's crazy.
I don't know.
Right?
I think the internet is like a weird thing. And I'm like, because I have someone who's helping with marketing, I'm like being more open to like being out there on social media. But I don't know. I think it's like a lot of people look like they're busy and look like they're doing things and like aren't. And then there's probably people who like are like not on social media who also aren't doing things. I think it's probably like a balance of what you're trying to put out there.
What's crazy is some of the people that I know that are doing the most are not out there at all. And that's what's
it's a lot of time. Like, are you ever sitting in a meeting like, hold on 1 second, let's do a quick TikTok. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not really
it's crazy
doing that, but
like you see influencers out there, people follow, but like, they are doing stuff, but like there's people that are really doing stuff that no one even knows their name.
It also depends what your business is. Like someone was saying to me, like, can you do more stuff where you talk about client matters? And no, like we have confidentiality. Like I can't be like, and now today we're like,
Client file 7.
But like if you're a realtor, you could be like, here we're touring, 6th and Addison or whatever it is. Like I can't. So, but I think social media, like all these other ways are really cool. Cause back in the day, not that we're like super old, but like, you couldn't market for free like this.
Correct.
Like you didn't have a platform to do that. So
this isn't free. I haven't sent you the invoice for this podcast yet.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be on TikTok, I'm sure.
Yeah. I want to ask you one couple final questions here as we wrap up. One thing I usually ask people, what would you tell your younger self? I want to know from you, what would you have told yourself 5 years ago in business that you wish you knew today? Or it's something that you've learned that like, if you knew it earlier, would have helped you out a little bit quicker?
I would tell my younger self, like, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about you. Like, it literally doesn't matter. It matters what you think about you. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing.
That's big.
I think I cared when I was younger and I was an athlete. I swam, I this, I that, I did dance. And I think I was really focused on like what other people were going to think or making other people proud and at the end of the day, you go to sleep alone, even if you're like with somebody, you're in your own body, in your own mind. And then you wake up and then you have to push for you. Anytime I've ever pushed for external reasons, like I want this person to like me, or like, I think that guy's cute or whatever, I'm going to go to the gym because of that. It's never been able to like be long standing.
Yep.
Whenever it's been for myself and grounded in like me and my goals and what I want and what I need, and not from a selfish place, like wanting for yourself is not selfish. It's gone way further. So that's like one of the things I would have told myself. It's like, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, because people who you thought were cool in high school, like I know so many people and I'm like, you peaked in high school and that's sad. And I used to think you were so cool and like, you're not.
That is a real thing, people peaking in high school. I know people that peaked in grammar school.
Yeah. I mean, and those are the people that are the meanest and the...
Yeah, that's why I didn't get invited to the party. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I am the party now.
I don't even like your... Yeah.
It is sometimes that's stuff that drives you a little bit. Like there's always a fuel, right?
Yeah,
What's the
fuel? You got to have a little chip on the shoulder.
Little fuel.
You got to have a little chip on your shoulder. You got to, there's otherwise you're not going to like push this hard. I think I also would say that like and I say this a lot, all the rules are made up. Like all of them. They're all made up.
Even contracts are made up.
Well, everything. I mean, I worked in city council legislating. Like that's making up rules, like, right? Like, and I know who's making them up. All the rules are made up. So if you're not doing something because this and that, it's all bullshit, truthfully. And it's you versus you. A lot of people walk around, I can't do this because of that. And this didn't work for me because that person did this and that I don't have this. And you can like live in that cycle of like, it's somebody else and something else. And everybody gets pluses and minuses in life. They get good genetics, they get bad genetics. They have rich parents, they have poor parents. They got to go to college, they did. You can use it as an excuse, or you can say like, here's the things I have and I'm going to max that shit out.
Yep.
And that's like been my mentality. Like, I am just going to go for it. If I fail, I fail, but at least I tried to do it. And I'm not going to make excuses as much as I can for why I can't do the things. Again, back to energy and negativity, like, and all that. So that's like,
it's big.
And you know me, like I do live like that.
Most people don't figure that out. So usually till it's too late.
Yeah. It's called therapy and self-work and, a lot of like, falling on your face. Because we could do a podcast on the things I have done wrong, which is part of the reason why I know how to do a lot of things right.
That's why you're doing a lot of things right. And I think that's big.
Yes.
Any last parting words? That was great, by the way. That was like a great thing.
That's
I think it's from the soul, but also I think it's, a lot of people beat themselves up. A lot of people do worry what someone thinks, or, I hope a lot of people hate me. Like I could give a shit. Right. But like, it's like, who cares when you start realizing. If my mom's
mad at me, like I will be gutted. But like short of that,
grandma is upset. Yeah.
Well, my grandma was usually annoyed with me because she's 95 and I like regularly, I'm like, what's the capital of this? Like just to see if she's like, get away from me.
Yeah, but I think that is something that people don't realize. It all is from within. It has nothing to do with external factors. It literally doesn't. That is the big secret.
Well, and that's what you can control, right? Like I can't control the weather today, but I control my attitude. I can control how I show up. I control how
you shouldn't be shitty today because it's raining.
Yeah.
Well, that's on you.
Yeah.
It's not on the rain.
Yeah. Well,
it's crazy, but like most people are wired that way, and you turn on TV, it just
and our brain is like that. Our brain's like, come up with an excuse why you don't have to be in pain or you don't have to do the thing.
Yep.
That's my last like parting words. I don't know. I think like it's corny, but like life's very short, and like I'm 35. I never thought I'd be 35. So I'm a little bit more like present in all of that. And I just like, I don't know. I'm just trying to approach everything as being exciting. Like everything's an opportunity and things are fun. And like really just being grateful of who's around me and who's on my team and who's rooting for me and trying and doing new things.
You know, one thing about who's rooting for you.
Yeah.
It's just, this is for everybody listening, everyone that's building their circles around them. What's interesting is to watch the people that cheer for you when stuff's going well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to do that.
No, it's actually, you know, when something good happens, who are the people that actually reach out and congratulate you?
True.
That's the teller.
Well, I also think when you're like in a bad way, like who's like, yo, you got this. Like, don't forget who you are. Cause it's easy to be like, oh, she's not doing well. Like I'm going to just.
You have a death in the family. Hey, sorry. You know, I'm sorry for right. That's easy. But like when you get the super lawyer award, who actually calls you and says, Rachel, fucking keep crushing her. Like that's actually what's telling to long-term relationships and the people that actually give a fuck. Yeah. Because a lot of people look at that and go, fuck her. She got a super lawyer. Fuck that. Like, you know, they will call you if there's a death in your family. Oh, Rachel, sorry. Anything I do here for you. But like to call you and be like, Rachel, you fucking crushed it. Like keep fucking going. Yeah. That's how you truly separate the circles. And it's wild. It's something I've learned long-term too. It's like, you know, Inc. 5,000 year over year business. Like, you know, amount of people that called and said like, Brian, like, how'd you, that's fucking awesome. Keep going. And it's usually people you don't expect. Yeah,
it's a lot of people you don't expect because we send some stuff out in emails and I get the responses. And I'm like, damn, that was so nice. That's so-and-so. And the last thing I wanted to say is like, there's no substitute for hard work. And like a lot of people don't see the grind. They do not see the late nights. They do not see the sacrifice. They do not see all the not fun stuff.
Wait, you can't do this in 9 to 5, Rachel?
No, it is not a 9 to 5. It's never been a 9 to 5. And when you love something the way you and I love like business and like all this stuff, like my brain doesn't shut off for it. But there's no like, there's no not hardworking. There's no easy. There wasn't like a one-hit wonder. It doesn't work like that. And making sure that you're bringing other people up with you. Like I spend a lot of time with the girls, especially the girls in my office, like trying to mentor them and just in the effort to like not on a high horse, but like cut your learning curve. Like I've screwed up all of these things. I don't want you to screw up all these things, and like giving back to people in that way, whether they stay working with me forever or not. I just always want to leave people like better off if I can, you know? And so that's sort of my try to be this way. And then there's days I'm just horrible. And that's the truth too.
It's all right. Everyone has
that's
those
the
days.
truth too.
Well, look, Rachel, in 5 years, when we have you back on this podcast and you're mayor of the city, I'm excited to see where you're headed and what new ideas or where PLG's at or what other ventures you start. But again, thanks for the value. I mean, well, I know we chatted about taxes and that's the boring part, but you know, everything else, we like the value of like growing a business, understanding that, look, you are alone sometimes. There is mornings you're going to get up and not going to want to fucking get to it. Right. But, you know, and it's also just like who's around you and who you're growing with. And, you know, I think, you know, you spit out a lot of value for the listeners and I appreciate it. I'm grateful of that. I know they will be too. So thank you.
We're always happy to help. Pritzker Law Group.
Yeah. How can people find you? So do you answer emails all of them?
I do. I will be up until like 2 a.m. most days answering emails. Some people have my cell phone and they like to ask me legal questions there, but at Pritzker Law Group's our Instagram, and contact at pritzkerlg.com is literally the best way to reach us, to reach out. And we do, like I said, 15-minute free consults. So whether you think we can help you or not.
Zoning, land acquisition, government, anything you need
real estate, business, and government in this city, we got you.
Cool. Awesome.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. See you soon.